Blur is a video game that cemented itself as an extremely critical piece of my childhood. It was developed by Bizarre Creations and published by Activision, released in May of 2010. 8-year-old me at that time did not yet know that my dad would go on to introduce me to an absolute gem of a video game 2 years later. If you're unfamiliar with it, which I wouldn't blame you for being, one of the absolute first things I would say if I were to describe it to you back in 2012 when I played it for the first time, and still now, 13 years later, is it's Mario Kart, but in real life. Wikipedia describes it as an, quote, arcade-style racing vehicular combat video game, which quite frankly is a bloody mouthful, so let's just stick with Mario Kart IRL. Because if you're familiar with Mario Kart, which I imagine 99% of people are, you'd have to live under a rock if you hadn't at least heard the word Mario Kart. It's pretty easy to just imagine that, but with real cars in real world locations, instead of silly looking characters going at 5 miles an hour who can sometimes be seen driving a literal shoe. Blur has power-ups that can be picked up and used by the player, just like Mario Kart, some of which even bear resemblance to Mario Kart's items. For Mario Kart's red shell, Blur has Shunt. For Mario Kart's green shell, Blur has Bolt. For Mario Kart's blue shell, Blur has Shock. For Mario Kart's mushroom, Blur has Nitro. For Mario Kart's fake item box / banana, Blur has Mine. You get the point. Even with the set of just 8 power-ups that Blur boasts compared to however many items Mario Kart has by now, make for some crazy times, which is only further aided by power-up mods, and they do exactly what you'd expect. Super Shunt will make your shunts deal more damage. Overbolt will give you a 4th bolt round. Quad Shock will create a 4th shock dome for all of your shocks instead of 3. You know, that sort of just buffing the abilities sort of thing. Honestly, as a 10-year-old Nintendo simp who absolutely loved Mario, one of the things that probably drew me to Blur the most was, shocker, its resemblance to Mario Kart, like I've said 2,000 times already. I have always just been a bit shit at racing games that involve real-world cars, because going so fast while having to look at a map to know when a turn is coming up is extremely anxiety-inducing for me. Mario Kart makes this less anxiety-inducing because I don't have to brake to get around said turns, unless I'm playing 200cc of course, but I'm usually not. As a child, I probably ate so many balls playing Blur that I could shit out a mansion, but that was all part of the fun. A lot of the tracks are decent, I love the OST, and the chaos that a lot of racers would bring that you don't get from real world racing games without power-ups, which made them less enjoyable for me personally, and therefore is what made Blur stand out so much. I actually don't remember if I ever tapped into the online multiplayer, but split screen with my dad and brother was always just top tier. Blur definitely has a stronger emphasis on combat than Mario Kart, with the ability to, quote, wreck other racers by fully depleting their health bar, for which you'll be rewarded. Wrecking enough cars in a single race will literally award you points for a quote unquote killing spree. And not to mention a whole ass destruction mode in the single player career, where you have to wreck as many cars as possible to score points. And on top of that is the other multiplayer destruction mode that I almost forgot to mention. And who doesn't like destroying stuff in video games? Come on. You're really encouraged to utilize the power-ups and get down and dirty in combat if you want to progress, especially by the sets of missions that each in-game league comes with, and particularly if you're anything of a completionist like myself, as you'll have to complete all the missions to get into a 1v1 race with each league's respective rival. Blur was met with favourable reviews on all platforms according to Metacritic. Nick Davies of Bizarre Creations announced in July 2010 that the studio intended to create more games in the series and wanted to make it the biggest racing franchise, which sounds exactly like something I would say about a project that I am most definitely never going to finish because I started getting way ahead of myself. A sequel was planned and work had even started on it, but Bizarre Creations was shut down by Activision on the 18th of February 2011. The sequel was, of course, binned as a result. This wasn't even a full year after the first game came out, mind you. I also just want to point out an excerpt from the Wikipedia page I found really funny that reads, quote, "Work in progress videos of the intended sequel were released post-mortem," because I thought post-mortem was a term reserved for dead people and not dead video games, but anyway. Blur was ultimately and unfortunately a commercial failure, selling 500,000 units. I spent so many years wondering what happened and when Blur 2 would be coming when I was a teenager, because I thought the game was amazing, and I still do, but that was back before I knew what the game's sales numbers were, or understood that companies aren't going to bother pumping more money into a flopped IP because it's simply not profitable. Its failure was attributed to the fact that it was released at a, quote, "very busy time for racing games," having released around the same time as the likes of Mod Nation Racers and Split Second. Knowing that really does leave me wondering, if it had been released a bit earlier or a bit later in the year, would it have stood a better chance? Or was it always just kind of cooked, like there was something else putting people off of trying it? It actually got a free-to-play spin-off in the form of a mobile game, Blur Overdrive, released in 2013, which turned the game into a top-down experience. It was fun. Definitely not as good as the original release, but I did get my fun out of it. One day it just disappeared from the App Store, but we've all seen many a game come and go from there over the years, so that's just one of the mill really. How long was it really going to stick around for anyway after the OG game flopped? I'm not sure what the goal really would have been with the IP by that point, since I would have figured it was already dead and buried. However, at the time, I don't remember if I knew that yet or not. Perhaps an attempt to reignite the dead flame, or one last hurrah before it was properly laid to rest. Development and distribution were handled by two entirely different groups of people with what I assume was no involvement from Activision, and of course our beloved Bizarre Creations was gone by this point. I know a lot of times we can allow ourselves to be blinded by nostalgia, which causes us to gas up games that were actually just really shit when we go back and revisit them. Well, that's if you're not in denial. But I regret to inform you that this is not that, and that is not this. Part of me wishes Activision could have got some other development studio to finish the sequel. I feel like that could have possibly led to the IP getting the recognition it deserved in the first place. But perhaps that was a risk that just wasn't worth taking, in case it also ended up joining the first game in the pile of rejects. I remember how upset I was, thinking I'd never be able to play Blur again after my dad gave up our PS3, but then I found out it's on PC, so at least knowing that it will always be there for me when I'm ready to jump back in brings me some solace. I just cannot stop wondering what could have been if more people just gave it a chance, and unfortunately, I don't think I'll ever stop wondering that, even after another 13 years have passed. It's just far too difficult to let go of something that was destined for greatness, but never got to flourish due to unfortunate circumstances. Blur, you will always, always live on in my heart, and if you have no fans, then that must mean I'm dead.